The galaxy was wounded. It bled in silence, yet every star seemed to whisper of pain. Worlds that once sang with laughter were now filled with smoke and ash. Fleets drifted like broken bones in space, shattered by endless wars. Every day, the Galactic Council sent out broadcasts to warn their people, warnings of new attacks, of territories lost, of planets burning. But on this day, a new message cut across the commnet. It was short, yet it struck harder than any weapon. Attention. This is a priority broadcast. A human war vessel has entered the war zone. All forces are advised to exercise caution. Repeat. A human war vessel has entered the war zone. The words repeated again and again, carried on every frequency, every language, until the entire galaxy heard it. Some dismissed it as false. Some laughed nervously. Others went pale with fear, their voices trembling as they whispered it to their neighbors. The humans. They've returned. For centuries, humanity had remained silent. They had joined no wars, pledged to no council, offered no fleets. While the galaxy burned, humans watched. Some races mocked them as cowards. Others envied them, believing they had found peace. But the truth was stranger, hidden in the long shadows of Earth's silence. No one truly knew what humanity had been doing all those years. Some said they were broken, retreating to their small corner of space. Others said they were preparing for something vast, something terrible, something that now came roaring into the galaxy with a single warning. Across a dozen worlds, alien leaders gathered their advisors. The name of humanity carried weight in every tongue. Long ago, when humans fought in the First Galactic War, their fleets had been small but terrifying. Their ships did not run. Their soldiers did not surrender. Every enemy who had faced them remembered the same chilling truth. Humans fought as though survival itself was a weapon. Then, without explanation, they had withdrawn. They closed their borders, silenced their signals, and left the galaxy to its chaos. Whole generations grew up never seeing a human ship. The younger races began to think of them as myths, exaggerated stories from a darker age. But the older ones knew. They remembered. And now the broadcast made clear, humanity had returned. On the frontier where the Krith Dominion advanced like a plague, the news spread among the soldiers. The Krith were conquerors, merciless and vast. For decades, they crushed every resistance. Yet when the transmission echoed through their fleets, their admirals went silent. They hissed in private, hiding their unease. The humans? Impossible. One commander spat, but no one argued. Even the Krith remembered. Meanwhile, on dying worlds, hope began to flicker in fragile hearts. Alien civilians who had lost everything listened to the broadcast as if it were a prayer. Humans, they've come. Mothers whispered it to their children. Old veterans straightened their backs, remembering ancient battles where humans fought beside them. To them, this was not a warning, it was a promise. Still, doubt lingered. What would the humans bring? Would they fight for the galaxy? Or only for themselves? Would they save? Or would they burn everything in their path? No one knew. The broadcast continued on every channel. Fleets stopped to listen. Armies froze in their trenches. Civilians gathered around broken radios and glowing screens. Across countless star systems, billions of eyes turned upward to the skies. Some were afraid, some were hopeful. But all of them understood one thing. The silence of humanity was over, and far beyond the war zone at the edge of a shattered star system, space itself began to tremble. A ripple spread, as if reality was tearing open. Sensors screamed in alarm, detecting a gravitational surge not seen in generations. Something vast was coming. Something human. The ripple in space grew wider, a wound spreading across the black canvas of the stars. Fleets on both sides, Council defenders and Krith invaders paused their battle. Guns fell silent, engines cooled. Every captain, every soldier, every sensor array turned toward the growing distortion. At first it looked like a shimmer of light, fragile and uncertain. But then the shimmer tore open into a vast storm. Energy flared, bending gravity itself, as if the universe was holding its breath. Out of that storm, something began to emerge. It was not a swarm of ships. It was not a small patrol. It was one vessel. The ship slid into real space like a shadow carved from iron. Its hull was black, layered with armor so thick it looked like a moving mountain. Ancient scars ran across its surface, each one a memory of battles long past. Some panels glowed faintly, symbols of Earth's forgotten wars, and then the name appeared etched in bold white letters that glowed against the darkness, NS Valiant. The comms lit up at once. Council soldiers gasped in disbelief. Krith warriors hissed in anger. And civilians across dozens of worlds watching the live battle feed whispered the name as though it were holy. The Valiant. No one had seen a human warship in centuries. Some thought they were all destroyed. Others believed humanity had abandoned the galaxy forever. Yet here it was, alive, real, and massive. The Valiant did not rush. It did not scatter fighters at once or fire its weapons blindly. It simply drifted forward, silent and calm, as if it carried all the time in the world. But every system could feel the weight of its presence. Its very arrival bent the rhythm of the battlefield. Council commanders stared at their screens, unable to speak. Some felt a rush of hope. Others felt a sting of shame. They had mocked humans for their silence. They had called them cowards. Now they realized humans had been watching, waiting, and building something beyond imagination. For the Krith Dominion, it was different. They remembered stories told to every warrior before battle. Stories of a species that fought like fire, reckless and unstoppable. Krith history recorded how even small human fleets had torn through empires greater than theirs. And now a ship larger and stronger than any they had ever seen floated before them. Fear settled into their bones. The battlefield went still. Thousands of ships on both sides circled in silence. Only the Valiant moved, its engines glowing faint, blue, humming like the deep breath of a giant. And then, its weapons unfolded. Panels shifted. Cannons rotated into place. Long barrels stretched outward, glowing faintly as power surged through them. Along the hull, hidden hatches opened, revealing wings of sleek fighters resting like hawks waiting to strike. The sight alone made entire fleets shiver. One council officer whispered into the comms, "It's beautiful." A Krith commander, his voice trembling with anger, shouted, "It's a threat, target it now." Across the galaxy, the broadcast continued to repeat, "Warning to all, a human war vessel has entered the war zone." But now the meaning had changed. At first it was only a message of fear and caution. Now it was a vision. Billions saw the black giant and felt the truth. Humanity had not returned weak. They had returned with power, with fury, with purpose. On the command deck of the Valiant, Captain Maracade stood silently, her eyes fixed on the sea of enemies before her. Her crew waited for her words. They were not afraid. They had trained for this. They had built this ship with their own hands, carried the weight of their ancestors, and prepared for the day when humanity would no longer stay silent. Mara finally spoke, her voice calm but sharp like a blade. "Helm, bring us into the center. Weapons, stand by." The crew answered with one word, steady and unified. "Aye, Captain." The Valiant turned its massive hull toward the heart of the Krith fleet. The war zone had a new center now, and it was human. The galaxy watched in silence. The giant had awakened. The arrival of the UNS Valiant was like a shadow falling across the stars. For a moment, no one moved. The Krith Dominion fleet, once roaring, with fire and confidence, fell into uneasy silence. Thousands of their warships floated in formation, yet their commanders hesitated. The Krith were no strangers to war. Their empire had crushed hundreds of civilizations, enslaved billions, and burned countless worlds. Fear was something they inflicted, not something they felt. But when their sensors locked onto the human warship, a memory stirred within them. A memory carried from their ancestors, told in hushed tones around war councils. The memory of humanity. Long ago, when the Krith first expanded, they had clashed with human fleets. The humans were fewer in number, Their technology not so advanced, yet they fought with a madness the Krith had never seen. They did not retreat, even when outnumbered. They did not surrender, even when their ships were breaking apart. A single, human destroyer could cripple fleets that should have overwhelmed them. The Krith eventually won those early battles, but they never forgot the cost. Hundreds of their warships had been reduced to ash by just a handful of human vessels. Since then, every Krith officer learned a warning written into their history. Never take humanity lightly. They fight as if death is nothing. Now, centuries later, the Krith saw the Valiant. It was not a fragile destroyer. It was not a small fleet. It was a giant, built in silence and shadow, carrying unknown power. Admirals hissed commands across their channels. Target it first. Crush it before it moves. Do not let the humans set foot on this battlefield. But their voices were edged with unease. The words were loud, but their hearts trembled. On the council side, soldiers watched in awe. They had been losing for months, their fleets shattered, their morale broken. But when they saw the human vessel unfold its weapons, something inside them reignited. "Is this real?" whispered one alien officer. "It's them," another answered, his voice breaking. The humans have come back. For the first time in years, hope spread faster than fear. In orbit of dying worlds, civilians watched the broadcast, clutching each other. On one planet, a young child asked his mother, "Will they save us?" The mother's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "If anyone can, it is them." Back among the Krith, fear twisted into anger. Their supreme commander roared across the fleet's comms, "They are only flesh, they bleed. Do not let myths guide your minds, fire on them now." The command was absolute. Thousands of Krith ships began to power their weapons. Plasma lances glowed. Torpedo tubes opened. Entire dreadnoughts aligned to focus fire on the single human ship. Yet, even as their weapons charged, hesitation lingered. No one forgot the stories. No one forgot the cost of underestimating the humans. Inside the Valiant, Captain Mara Cade watched the Krith formations shifting. She could feel the tension building, not only in her crew but across the battlefield. Everyone knew what was coming. Her voice broke the silence. "They're afraid." Her first officer nodded, his eyes on the scanners. "Yes, Captain. Afraid and desperate." Mara gave a thin smile, calm but fierce. "Good. Fear makes them reckless. Let them come." The moment shattered when the Krith opened fire. A storm of plasma bolts and missiles tore across space, lighting the void in brilliant arcs of death. The barrage was so vast it looked like a star going supernova. It was the kind of attack that had destroyed entire fleets in minutes. But this time, their target was the Valiant. And as the galaxy held its breath, the fear shifted. For though the Krith fired first, deep inside their hearts, they already knew the truth. They were not the hunters anymore, they were the prey. The void lit up with fire. Thousands of plasma lances burned across space, painting the darkness in blinding arcs of blue and green. Missile swarms streaked like angry comets, their warheads glowing with destructive heat. Torpedoes launched in waves, cutting through the void with relentless speed. The Krith had unleashed everything. From a distance, it looked like a storm swallowing the human vessel whole. The UNS Valiant was buried under a flood of enemy fire so heavy that even council officers watching from afar turned their heads away. "No ship can survive that," one whispered, his voice hollow. But inside the storm, the Valiant did not fall. Her shields blazed like a wall of silver light, rippling as the Krith barrage crashed against them. Plasma bursts splashed across the barrier, scattering like rain against a mountain. Missiles exploded one after another, but the shock waves bent harmlessly around the ship. Torpedoes struck, shaking the shields, yet they held firm. On the Valiant's bridge, Captain Mara Cade stood unmoving. Her eyes remained fixed on the storm outside. The deck trembled under the impacts, alarms flickered red, but her voice was calm. "Report." "Shield stable at 87%, her tactical officer replied. "No breaches." A silence fell over the crew, not of fear, but of awe. The Krith had thrown everything at them, and the Valiant still stood. In the Krith fleet, confusion spread. Admirals barked demands for damage reports, but the answers came back the same. None. Not a single scar marked the human vessel's hull. They survived? A Krith commander hissed, his voice trembling. Another slammed his clawed fist against the console. No, they cannot withstand that forever. Double the fire, press them harder. But deep inside, their fear grew. The storm slowed, fading as the Krith adjusted their attack. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The Valiant answered. Her broadside unfolded with the grace of a predator. Railguns, massive and sleek, rotated into position. Energy cannons flared, their cores glowing like suns about to rise. Hidden panels along the hull split open, releasing swarms of drones and fighters that ignited their engines in silent unity. Fire, Mara commanded. The first volley struck. Railgun slugs screamed through the void at a fraction of light speed, invisible until they ripped through enemy ships. A Krith cruiser erupted into molten shards before its crew even registered the impact. A second was torn in half, its hull snapping like paper. The energy beams followed, searing lines of pure destruction that carved through destroyers, vaporizing armor as if it were air. Missiles launched from the Valiant's underbelly, streaking into the densest parts of the Krith formation. When they detonated, the void bloomed with fireballs that swallowed entire squadrons at once. In a single strike, dozens of Krith warships were erased from existence. The galaxy watched in silence. Every comms channel carried the vision. The mighty Krith Dominion, feared by all, was being shredded by one human ship. On council vessels, soldiers began to cheer. Their hopeless despair shifted into wild, desperate hope. They're doing it. The humans are winning. On Krith decks, panic erupted. Some captains screamed orders to retreat. Others demanded their crews press forward. But fear spread faster than commands. Inside the Valiant, the crew did not cheer. They worked in calm silence, their faces steady. This was not surprise to them. This was what they had trained for. Captain Mara Cade stood like a statue of iron. Her voice cut through the chaos with sharp precision. Advance through their line. Do not stop. The ship moved forward, plowing directly into the heart of the Krith Armada. Every weapon on the Valiant sang in unison, a storm of human firepower unleashed after centuries of silence. And as the battlefield burned, one truth became clear to all who watched. The Krith had fired first, but the humans would fire last. The Valiant surged forward, cutting through the heart of the Krith fleet. Every turn of its massive hull sent shockwaves across the surrounding warships, forcing them to swerve or risk collision. The air, or whatever passed for air on alien decks, seemed to vibrate with the sheer presence of the human vessel. Inside, the bridge hummed with disciplined focus. Crew members worked with precision born from decades of training, decades of silent preparation. None hesitated, none faltered. They had waited for this moment all their lives, a moment to prove that humanity would no longer watch the galaxy burn in silence. Captain Mara Cade stood at the helm, eyes sharp, voice calm but commanding. She did not need to shout. Every officer and sailor on the Valiant knew her orders before she spoke them. Advance through their command fleet, she said. No mercy. Protect the innocent. Stop the war. The Krith realized too late that the humans were not just another enemy. They were an unstoppable force, a storm incarnate. Fleets that had crushed worlds now faltered, unsure whether to flee or fight. Some ships tried to form barriers around their flagship, but the Valiant did not hesitate. Railguns cut through the hulls of battleships as if they were paper. Energy beams ignited the void, vaporizing entire squadrons. Even the Krith flagship, massive and heavily armed, trembled under the assault. Its commanders shouted orders, but panic had already spread through the fleet. Humans fought differently. They fought not for conquest, not for glory, but with the raw purpose of survival and protection. And the Valiant carried all of humanity in its wake. On distant worlds, civilians who had lost hope stared at glowing screens. Children clutched their parents' hands, eyes wide with awe. Soldiers who had been ready to surrender found new courage. For the first time in years, the galaxy felt something it had almost forgotten: hope. Inside the Valiant, Mara's first officer, Lieutenant Riel, reported calmly. "Command fleet disrupted, Captain. Enemy formations breaking. Civilian worlds in range are stabilizing." Mara nodded. Her face softened for a moment, but only slightly. "Good. Keep moving. The faster we end this, the more lives we save." The crew continued their work with quiet precision. Engineers rerouted power to shields, weapons operators adjusted targeting, and navigators plotted paths through debris fields that would have crushed lesser ships. Every movement was measured, every action deliberate. As the Valiant reached the center of the Krith command, Mara raised her voice across the bridge. "We will not stop until their threat is gone. Humanity stands for the galaxy. We fight for freedom, for peace, and for life itself. Let them see what it means to face us." Her words were not just heard on the Valiant. Through long-range communications, they echoed across the battlefield, reaching allies and enemies alike. For the first time, the galaxy understood the human spirit, fearless, relentless, and unwavering. The Krith flagship fired everything it had left: missiles, plasma bolts, torpedoes. A storm meant to destroy a small fleet at least, and yet it struck the Valiant only with partial effect. Shields absorbed the brunt, while the ship continued forward, slicing deeper into enemy lines. One by one, enemy ships began to fall. Not because humans were merciless killers, but because their resolve was stronger than fear. The Valiant moved like a wave, unstoppable, carving a path that none could block. For Mara, there was no pride, no thrill of victory, only a solemn determination. Every ship she destroyed, every weapon she fired, was to save lives, to give the galaxy a chance at peace. Humanity had waited, watched, and built its strength in silence. Now, that silence had ended, and the galaxy could feel its power. The command fleet collapsed. Panic spread like wildfire. The Valiant had shown the Krith exactly what humans were capable of, and as the human vessel continued to advance, one undeniable truth rang across the stars. Humanity did not fight to conquer. Humanity fought to protect, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it before. The Krith fleet was unraveling. Ships that had once surged forward in perfect formation now drifted in confusion. Some tried to regroup, but fear had already spread through their ranks like wildfire. The UNS Valiant moved at the center, a dark monolith glowing with blue energy, cutting through the enemy like a sharpened blade. Inside the ship, Captain Mara Cade watched the battlefield unfold on her tactical screens. Every sensor, every readout, every data stream told the same story. The tide of war had shifted, but she did not allow herself relief. Not yet. Lives hung in the balance, and every decision mattered. "Target the lead dreadnought," Mara ordered. "Concentrate fire. Disable it without harming the civilian convoy nearby." Her crew obeyed immediately. Weapons powered up, the Valiant's railguns and energy cannons focusing on a single massive ship. Missiles launched in precise formation, slicing through enemy shields. In moments, the dreadnought's engines flared and died, drifting helplessly into space. The Krith watched, stunned. A single human vessel had destroyed their strongest ship without even slowing down. Panic erupted. Orders clashed. Some commanders shouted for retreat, others insisted on pressing the attack. Chaos consumed the fleet. Meanwhile, across nearby worlds, civilians and allied forces saw the battle unfold in real time. People who had given up hope were cheering, tears streaming down their faces. Soldiers who had been ready to surrender found courage again. Humanity's arrival had sparked something deeper than fear in the Krith. It had reignited the galaxy's faith. Even the council fleets, long battered and beaten, began to move with renewed purpose. They formed protective lines around fleeing civilians, inspired by the humans' fearless advance. Inside the Valiant, Lieutenant Riel reported, Enemy formation collapsing, Captain. Remaining ships are retreating. Civilian convoy safe for now. Mara's eyes softened as she heard the words, but she kept her expression steady. Good, she said. Let them know humanity fights not for conquest, but for life. Maintain firepower. Do not stop until the last threat is neutralized. The crew nodded, returning to their stations with calm determination. Every soldier, engineer, and officer knew the weight of the moment. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors but as protectors, and the galaxy's survival rested on their shoulders. In the Krith fleet, fear had become desperation. Ships tried to flee, but the Valiant moved with relentless precision, cutting off escape routes and neutralizing threats with minimal collateral damage. Humans did not kill for vengeance, they killed to protect, to defend, and to restore hope. The Krith flagship, now isolated, faced the human vessel alone. Its massive, guns fired in fury, but the Valiant's shields held firm. Mara issued a calm singular command. End this. With a coordinated strike, the Valiant's weapons hit every weak point of the enemy flagship. Energy beams ripped through armor, railguns shattered weapon turrets, and missiles destroyed the engines. Within moments, the Krith flagship exploded, in a magnificent bloom of fire, visible across light years. Across the galaxy, billions of eyes turned toward the Valiant. Every system, every fleet, every civilian understood the message. Humanity had returned. Not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as a force willing to stand against tyranny. And in the silence that followed the destruction, a single truth echoed across the void. The tide had turned. The Valiant had changed everything. On the bridge, Mara looked out at the empty space where the Krith had once held dominion. Her crew watched silently, exhausted but unwavering. They had done more than win a battle. They had restored hope to a galaxy that had long forgotten it. Mara's voice broke the quiet. We have shown them what it means to fight for life. Humanity will not bow. Humanity will not hide. We will always stand. The crew nodded, the weight of centuries of preparation, sacrifice, and courage settling in their hearts. And far across the stars, the remaining enemy ships fled, carrying a single lesson with them. Never underestimate humanity. DR. Battlefield was quiet now. The echoes of explosions still lingered in the void, but the chaos of the Krith armada was gone. Ships that had once threatened entire worlds were either destroyed, retreating, or surrendering. The UNS Valiant floated at the center, dark and majestic, its hull scarred but unbroken. Inside, Captain Mara Cade stood at the command deck, her eyes scanning the remnants of the battlefield. Her crew, though weary, moved with calm precision, ensuring no threats remained and that fleeing civilian convoys were safe. They had done what many believed impossible. They had turned despair into hope. Across the galaxy, billions of eyes watched the Valiant's actions in stunned silence. Systems that had been lost to the Krith now celebrated. People who had hidden in fear came out of shelters, watching the comm feed with tears streaming down their faces. Children whispered names of heroes they had never met. Soldiers raised fists in solidarity, and governments long paralyzed by fear now acted with courage inspired by one human ship. Even the council fleets, battered and broken, began to move in unison, reclaiming lost positions. Humanity had reminded them all what it meant to fight, not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival and hope. In the Krith fleet, panic reigned. Their flagship was destroyed. Their command was fractured. Ships retreated as fast as they could, but every crew knew the truth. The humans had changed the rules of the galaxy forever. One Krith admiral muttered under his breath, fear and awe tangled together. They are not like us. They never were, and they never will be defeated. On the Valiant, Mara addressed her crew. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of generations. We have shown the galaxy what it means to stand. Humanity fights not for power, not for control, but for freedom, for life. This is our warning to anyone who would threaten peace. We will rise and we will not fall. The crew remained silent, absorbing the gravity of her words. Their eyes shone with pride, exhaustion, and the quiet understanding that they had done more than win a battle. They had rewritten history. Mara activated the long-range broadcast system. Her message carried across light years, reaching every corner of the galaxy, every fleet, every civilian. This is Captain Mara Cade of the UNS Valiant. To all who seek conquest, tyranny, or fear, know this. Humanity does not fight for glory. We fight for life. We fight for freedom. If you bring war to this galaxy, we will stand against you. And we will not fall. Let this battle be your warning. The words echoed in every communication network. For the first time in decades, a single message brought the entire galaxy to silence. And in that silence, a collective understanding formed. Humans had returned, and the galaxy was no longer theirs to claim without challenge. Outside, the Valiant drifted in the void, black and unyielding against the stars. Its hull bore the scars of the first great battle in centuries, yet it remained undefeated. Around it, alien fleets, council forces, and fleeing Krith ships all paused, witnessing the ship that had changed everything. Mara looked out at the stars, her thoughts quiet. She knew the war was not over, that threats would rise again. But she also knew humanity's message had been delivered. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, and the galaxy would never forget. As the Valiant's engines hummed, propelling it toward the outer rim, one truth remained clear across every world, every fleet, and every mind. A human war vessel had entered the war zone, and nothing would ever be the same again.